We are going to predict 5 breakout stars for the Aggies on today's episode of Locked On Aggies.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk a little bit about the backfield and how much is it going to be split between players and percentages and stuff like that. I've got some thoughts there I've been thinking about lately. But we're going to start the show talking about some breakout candidates for this Texas A&M football team. So there's an article from the Austin American-Statesman, and they predicted 5 breakout stars for Texas A&M. One is going to create a serious conversation, and then I've got a few of my own that were not on this list that we're going to talk about, so we're going to get right on into it. The first player that they have listed as a potential breakout candidate for this football team is the new tight end for Texas A&M, Amari Niblack, that came over from Texas. Of course, previously was Alabama. The blurb says the Aggies didn't have to look far to potentially find the starting tight end for 2025. Amari Niblack played for the Texas Longhorns 24, seeing limited action behind Gunnar Helm, and now heads College Station. He collected 5 catches for 3 yards in 2024 for the Longhorns. Prior to his brief stint in Austin, he spent 2 seasons with the Crimson Tide. He had a career high production in 23, finishing with 20 catches and 327 yards, 4 touchdowns. A&M didn't get enough from the tight end spot in 2024, a total of 34 catches for 571 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is, a split between a bunch of those players, which is why they added 3 via the portal, and Niblack is one of those. So those of you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I think that Amari Niblack is going to be a really good player this year. I mean, we know that Colin Klein wants to find a way to use his tight ends more. And I think that, it really felt like he didn't end up kind of getting to do that as much as he would have liked last year. Now, whether it was personnel, whether it was game plan, whatever it was, it really didn't feel like he got to end up using the tight ends as much as he would have wanted. And, you're losing a lot of guys to the NFL draft. And, of course, you're bringing in 3 guys in the portal. You've got Coyote Armstrong, the freshman coming in, who I think is going to be a monster. Then on top of that, you still got Theo sticking around here. So, I mean, there's a lot of names and bodies in this tight end room that could play a significant role for the Aggies. I think that Niblack's going to be the guy, though. I mean, those of you that have been listening to Locked On Aggies for a while now, those of you that have been listening recently, I mean, I've been very pro Amari Niblack having a big role for this team. So, I mean, that kid flashed at Alabama, man. He flashed, and I think that you're going to see him flash again as a player for the Aggies, and I think Colin Klein's going to get him involved. Problem is now that you've also done a great job adding to your wide receiver room, I've lost a little bit of confidence in the tight ends having a ton of production, knowing that you've got Concepcion and some other great players, Craver, Wilson. I mean, it's a room that I think is now so good that on top of how much the Aggies want to run the ball, that tight ends might struggle to see a ton of snap or a ton of receptions. But I think that all the receptions, not all, but a good chunk of the receptions that go to the tight end position are going to be going to Amari Niblack. The next name they have here is Solomon Williams. A&M attacked the transfer portal looking for defensive line help. 4 defensive linemen are heading in, and all appear to figure into the equation in 2025. However, Solomon Williams enters his second season with the A&M and shouldn't be counted out just yet. Williams appeared in 3 games last season, with his most expensive action coming against USC in the Las Vegas Bowl. Williams finished with 3 tackles, including 1.5 tackles for loss, and finished 4th on the defense with a 72.4 grade on PFF. And it was Solomon Williams talking about guys that are going to break out on this defensive line. And I mean, why? I talked yesterday about, did Coach Elko do enough in the transfer portal? The reason that I think maybe he was a little hesitant to go get a ton of veterans in the portal was because of players like Solomon Williams, a guy who I think is going to come in and play some really good football this year in his second year for the Aggies. I mean, he was a young guy last year. We talk about it all the time. It's really hard for young guys to get snaps in the trenches, especially when you have guys named, I don't know, Nick Scorton, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart across that defensive line. It just makes it more and more challenging to, kind of work your way into that, work your way out there. And that is kind of one of the challenges of being a young guy in a place at Texas A&M where you've had great defensive lines of late. So Solomon Williams, it's good to see that he did get some run in a few games this year, especially that Las Vegas Bowl. I think you're going to see him get even more snaps this year. I mean, I think there's, he's a name that I think you're going to hear a good amount in the offseason, but not a ton. And then he has a real opportunity to just be really good. I mean, the high school film was great. The little he did last year in the Vegas Bowl, his body of work as a true freshman on the defensive line was incredibly impressive. So I think Solomon Williams is a guy that will work his way into a significant role this year. I'm kind of bought into that. In a position where, I just don't know that we have enough guys at that defensive line. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. I think that, if you do have enough guys on your defensive line, then a player like Solomon Williams is going to have to step up and be darn good. So I think that if you're a Texas A&M fan, you're really hoping that he is a player that takes that step to the next level. And yeah, I think he's more than capable of doing it, but it's going to take a little bit of work. I think that he's going to have to, improve this offseason. So, I mean, you bring in Oyinum on that defensive line that's more of an interior guy. Solomon Williams, I mean, I like his frame. He can play a lot of positions. I think he's got NFL upside. There's no question, but it would be really beneficial for this Texas A&M football team if Solomon Williams became a great player. And once again, he's the type of guy that is capable of having a monstrous season. So, I mean, the reality is if he is able to become a guy that'll give you a handful of tackles each game and help stop the run and get after the quarterback, he is going to really make the coaches look smart with how they handle the portal. I mean, we talked about you bring in 3 guys that are going to come off the edge, and on Yinum's, you're really your one guy that's going to kind of play in the middle there. I think that we wanted to see the staff go get some more guys. So if players like Solomon Williams can really take a step in the right direction, it would make this coaching staff look really, really darn smart ahead of next season. We've got some more players to talk about that I think are candidates to break out. We've got a linebacker. We've got a receiver that's really questionable to me. And then we also have another defensive lineman. And then I'm going to give you my 3 players that I think aren't on this list but are set to break out. We're going to keep this conversation going right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our wonderful friends over at Game Time. Once again, those of you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know how much I love the Game Time app. Any sporting event, any comedian, any concert, anywhere you want to go that involves a ticket, Game Time is the place that you need to be buying that ticket. The best prices. My favorite feature of the app is how when you look, you can see, okay, here's a seat. This ticket is $94. This seat's a couple rows back and it's $73. Man, the difference, you can get pricing differences. It helps you find the perfect seat for your budget, the perfect seat for what you're looking for when it comes to wanting to watch a sporting event, a concert, a comedian, a theater, the play, whatever you're going to. This is the best place to go buy your tickets to these events. I love the Game Time app, and I promise y'all will as well. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Looking at this list, like I said, there are a lot of names that I think could really break out for the Aggies this year. The next name on this in this article from the Austin American-Statesman is one that I'm not sure I'm buying, and that's Micah Hudson. Now, I'll read you the blurb here. They do talk about the uncertainty. It says, the uncertainty surrounding Micah Hudson this offseason clouds his prospects for 25 and beyond. With Hudson reportedly stepping away from the team earlier this year, there may be more questions than answers about the former five-star wideout. Hudson was catching passes last week from A&M backup quarterback Miles O'Neill, which is potentially a good sign. Nevertheless, if Hudson finds his way back onto the field, he could be an offense-changing breakout candidate in 2025. Here's my thing about Micah Hudson. Y'all remember, he was the guy that I was the most fired up about at first before Concepcion. You can't not be the most fired up about Concepcion. But, I was bought in. I was all the way bought in on Micah Hudson. And then, this news that he's going to step away from football for a little while, whatever's going on. That to me, it's hard to be bought in anymore because it's like there's so much uncertainty around, is he even going to be on the field for the Aggies? We really don't know. We don't know if he's going to be on the field this year or not. And he's a player to me. It's pretty simple. If he's out there, I think that he's going to be really good for this program. I think that he is a guy that is more than capable of taking his game to the next level. I don't think you saw the best version of Micah Hudson last year at Texas Tech. I just don't think you did. I think that he's a guy that is going to come in to a new program, whatever's going to end up happening with him, and having a big role. I know that he's a guy from around there, so it's kind of hard for him to leave, but I see him being a great player if this is what he wants in his life, to play football. I think there's a world it'd be hard for him to break into that starting lineup with Concepcion and Bussy. And I think that him and some different players, because he's more of an outside guy. It's going to kind of depend, but it wouldn't be easy for him to walk right into a starting spot. But at the same time, I am a big believer that if Micah Hudson was able to be out there on the field for the Aggies, maybe it's not this year, but he is going to break out at some point in some way, in some capacity. So this one of those, if y'all hear something on Mike Hudson, let me know. I'll do the same. If anything's going to happen with him, the more I know, the more I'll tell you. It's just, not a situation we know a lot about right now. And there's definitely a lot of uncertainty about his future with the program. The next name here is a really interesting one, but one I like, and it's Damen Sanford, the linebacker. The blurb says, with starters Terry York and Scooby Williams returning, Damen Sanford may not be in line to start, but that doesn't mean his impact can't be felt in 2025. Sanford appeared in all 13 games last season, finishing with 33 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a sack. Sanford has appeared in 26 games for the program and could be an asset in the second level of the Aggies defense this season. Questions about the linebacker room may linger, particularly how the rotation shakes out behind the starters. However, the fact that the Aggies opted not to address the position via the portal may speak volumes of how they feel about Sanford and the depth of the rest of the room. It's a great point. Sanford's a guy who's been here for a little while now and a guy that I think is going to continue to improve. He hasn't ever really gotten a ton of snaps to see him take that next level, but I believe that if he were to get those snaps, he would be really good. To me, he's an insurance policy behind York and Scooby Williams, because I know that Damen Sanford's a guy that can be, and we were impressed with him in the spring game. There was a lot of hype around him after that. We know that there is belief in how good Damen Sanford can be. It's there. There's no question. It's just, do we need him? But if a player, if Williams, if York doesn't play up to their potential this year and they aren't as good, it's great to have a player like Sanford. And that's a great point in this article, a great point they made. Not going to get a linebacker in the portal, I think, does speak volumes to the fact that Texas A&M might feel like they're in a really good spot in this position. So that's kind of exciting to see. But yeah, I think Damen Sanford's a guy. He's a great player to have. He's a great player that's going to get snaps every single game, and he's going to get some run. But knowing that he is going to be able to be out there and help your team out and give you some valuable snaps when you need a player to rest, or if you just need a player to kind of come in and shake something up or throw something different at an offense, whatever it is, I think Damen Sanford's a great option to have. So I am excited to see what he is going to do this year for the Aggies. The next player on this list is none other than DJ Hicks. DJ Hicks is a guy, those of you that have been listening to Locked On Aggies for a while know that I have been begging for him to have that breakout that we know is inside of him. The blurb says defensive tackles and unglamorous position, but important nonetheless. With Shamar Turner off to the NFL, it leaves a hole in the middle of the Aggies defensive line. Rising senior Albert Regis is assumed to be manning his customary spot, and while some outside additions may factor in, DJ Hicks could also see himself play some more meaningful snaps. Hicks appeared in all 13 games last season, and he played in 24 over his 2 seasons. He finished with 17 total tackles in 2024, including 3 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. DJ Hicks is such an interesting name because, we know coming out of high school, he was supposed to be an absolute star for this program. And I feel like kind of early into his career, we really haven't seen him take that next step. So I think that he needs to do that. I think that he's more than capable of taking that next step. So we need to see it happen, though. We can't sit here and just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. He's got to find a way to actually do it. So that is what we need to see happen. And I think, once again, just like what we talked about with Solomon Williams, if DJ Hicks is able to take that next step, it's just going to take more pressure off some of these defensive linemen. So I really want to see him take that 5-star step that we've been begging for, we've been waiting on, because we know that it's in him. We know that without a question that it is in him. So if he could really dominate next year, it just makes this unit that, once again, I don't think this staff went and did as much as I would have expected in the portal. It would be great to see a guy like DJ Hicks, Solomon Williams prove why the staff didn't need to go get as many players as maybe we thought in the portal. That would be massive. So the 3 names that I have down here, one is the transfer Sam Mpimba. When you watch the film on this kid out of high school, when you see the way that he plays the game, it is so clear that there is great football left in that kid. And if he finds it off the edge, he could be a star. He can be such a good player. So Sam Mpimba is a guy that I think you're going to see him elevate his game to that next level this year. And I'm really excited to see what is going to end up happening with him. But when a kid is ranked as high as he is, when a kid is ranked as high as Sam Mpimba is in high school, absolutely know that there is upside in him. So I'm excited to see if that upside is going to come to fruition. I think it is. We're going to move this running back conversation to tomorrow. It's something I had a kind of an epiphany, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But I have 2 more players I want to talk about, and we'll talk about them. We've got another defensive lineman and a receiver coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. Pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000x your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. There's a lot of things in this game. This week, I'm looking at on the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce's receiving yards and more for a quarterback passing yards in, honestly, both sides of this. Check out promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big time game lineups. If you tail that lineup and go 3 for 3, you can split $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So the next name that I have here is Ashton Bethel Roman. And this is a tough one. And it's going to be interesting to see if he, knowing what you brought in the portal, is going to be able to find a role for the Aggies. I think that he's a player. When we got him, when we pulled him over last year, I thought that he was going to have a big career at Texas A&M. But, I mean, he's still got a lot to prove. I think that you got to see it happen. And he's going to be behind some really good players in Concepcion and Craver, Hudson, if he's still, with the program, and Wilson and Bussy. I mean, it's a good receiver room now. And it's funny because if you looked at a player like Ashton Bethel Roman 3 months ago, you're going, man, he's going to have a massive season next year. I'm not so sure what's going to happen now because of all of the elite talent that you brought in this room. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see what's going to end up happening with him in the future, because I think that there's definitely a role for him, but what it's going to be is the question. The next and last name I have to talk about today is Cassius Howell. I don't know if it's even fair to consider him a breakout candidate because, I think that we're all pretty darn sure that he's going to have a massive season, but Cassius Howell is a guy nonetheless that is he was really good last year, but now he's got to take that next step to elite. I think he's not going to be really a breakout player for Texas A&M because all Aggie fans know who he is. I think he's going to be more of a breakout onto the college football scene. The PFF grade as a pass rusher speaks for itself. He is the type of player that is going to have an NFL franchise absolutely fired up in the future. So if he can just have a really, really good year this year, not only is it going to be good for the Aggies, but he's going to make himself some money. I think when he came over from Bowling Green, I believe he had 9.5 sacks the year prior before coming over here. I thought that he was going to be a player that we were going to see really be dominant. But then Nick Scorton proved to be exactly what we thought he was. He was the elite pass rusher for this team, which made it a little bit harder for Cassius Howell to kind of have that role that we expected him to have. So I think that now this is his time to shine. This is Cassius Howell's opportunity to prove he is that guy. So I think he's going to be a breakout candidate for the Aggies. Not really the Aggies, but for college football, in all honesty, next season. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit about that running back conversation. I had kind of an epiphany. We'll break it down tomorrow. We will also preview the basketball game for the Aggies. It's going to be a really important game. You're going on the road to play a team in Missouri who just lost a game in Tennessee. They're probably upset about it. They're going to be angry. Texas A&M has to show up and play their A game if they want to win on Saturday. So we'll preview that game tomorrow, have this running back conversation, and talk about something else that we'll figure out tomorrow. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.